All right, we are live. The tweet is out. I need to tweet it to what do you call a blue sky post, fellas?
Well, I don't know. You're putting it in the cloud somewhere, aren't you? That's about us.
Craig, you use blue sky more
I
than
have
the
no
other two.
idea either.
What do you call it? A sky? A blue? I'm gonna blue it.
I don't know.
A skeet. Jesus, we're not calling it a skeet. That's an immediate veto. That's good. All right. Well, anyway, excellent segue to start the show. Very productive. Hello, fellas. Episode 270 of Together BHA. We are live. We are talking Bournemouth away as Storm Burt, which is the name of my cat, which has not gotten old all weekend, has ravaged the UK. It's been absolutely miserable everywhere. I don't think it felt like I was living in like Scandinavia, where like it never got light today. And Robin, being further up north, I suspect that's your current lighting is basically how you've been all day as well. I expect. How's everyone feeling?
I've got the lights on. That's like just candlelight. That's how we live in these parts. No, cold. Just very, very cold.
Yeah, I was going to say every football game I've watched this weekend has just been absolutely pissing it down. So I'm quite glad to not be there. Although having said that, it's not been great on the East Coast here the last couple of days either.
Did you get some snow? Or?
A little bit, but I was thankfully in New Orleans when that was happening. So
nice.
I avoided it, which was great. And thankfully my plane back didn't get delayed. So I basically went away perfectly for the amount of time where it sort of rained and snowed a bit and then came back to sort of just standard cold weather. Great stuff.
Nice. Good. We had like 4 or 5 inches of snow just out of nowhere here. So,
Jesus.
That was fun. Just like overnight. And I, again, just pissed it down the next day. So it all disappeared. It was all like a fever dream. But
very Chicago-y that is. That's very Chicago.
Yeah. Winter is here, so for all of us it seems.
Yeah, very much so. Robin, you say it was hot, but like yesterday we went from like 2 degrees to 15 like Celsius like throughout the day. It's like it was warm last night, and now it's going to go back down to cold. So I don't know what's going on. Like it's all right. Bournemouth, though, as you say, absolutely pissing it down. We've just come back from a long international break where we've had a chance for some players to get fit, come back, get ready and raring to go. Pierre said,
I think I hate Pierre.
He's in France with the current flowing backwards on the river Rhone. I thought it would be the Rhine. Is that Rhone? Is that a different one as well?
The Rhine's in Germany.
Okay. Oh yeah, of course it is.
Do you not know?
Seine in France, isn't it?
Don't ask John for any wine recommendations, by the way. It's going to give you a Côte de Rhine. So,
waves crashing up the river.
No, I'm jealous of Pierre. That sounds great.
That does sound nice.
They got some snow in the week, though. I was on a call with a client who was in Paris, and they showed me that out their window, and they were like, "We can't see the Eiffel Tower today. It's just a cloud of snow." Like, so, yeah, pretty crazy. How are you feeling about the lineup that was rolled out there? 2 very, very notable returns to the starting 11: Joao Pedro and Carlos Babela, after having, one having a very lengthy timeout, and the other one just, having a knock for a couple of weeks. When you're looking at this Bournemouth squad, the form that they were in, right, because they've been pretty good this season so far, knocking around mid-table before this. They'd beaten Arsenal at home, drew with Villa away, then beaten Manchester City at home, of course, before then losing to Brentford 3-2. So obviously just one of those weird mid-table Premier League sides, the sort of ones that you really don't want Brighton to be running into post-international break over the last couple of years. How are you feeling about that lineup away? Weather, everything involved. What was the vibe going into Bournemouth for you guys?
After the Man City result for us, and then you have the international break that felt like it could have taken the wind out of ourselves a little bit, didn't it? And yeah, you're right. I think of all our fixtures, and I will regret saying this, I was looking at this one with probably the most concern. Just because everyone's been talking about Iraola as sort of some kind of second coming of a coaching god. Like he can do no wrong. Look at what he's done. At the same time, you sort of, yeah, they've had some impressive results, but broadly, they've not been amazing, but that's good enough for Brighton to screw it up. And as I think you said, our record at Bournemouth is shocking, like really, really bad. So I think there was a lot of relief that we saw Babela in the team and Joao Pedro in the team. I know there was a little bit of concern that Babela might not be able to make the game still from a bit of an injury. Joao Pedro, obviously, we know is not fully back up to speed, but as we've seen now in this game and the game against Man City, we'll take a 30, 40, 50, 60% Joao Pedro because it turns out he might be better than 90% of the Premier League, even at that. So it looked good. I mean, I think the biggest thing for me was what we did up top, because we had finally, I don't know if we even played this yet. I don't know if we've been able to. We had Joao Pedro, Welbeck, Matoma, and Rita in the same starting 11. And I guess there were some question marks as to how that would work. And seemingly it works fairly well.
Agreed. That was the question I think we debated before, is what happens when Joao Pedro's fit in terms of Ruta? And the answer is put them both in and it works seamlessly well. It turns out. I mean, I think from a practical point of view, Ruta, he seemed to be everywhere. And it made our right side look a lot kind of more shored up as well. He seemed a lot more solid. So it was really good. I didn't necessarily see him slotting in so easily, just sort of out wide, but he did really well. He just seems to be, someone said that he's kind of come in and replaced Pascal Gross in a lot of ways, in terms of being that player that just seems to pop up. He just seems to be everywhere, covers a lot of ground and just seems to pop up at the right place, which seems lofty praise given we're dozen games in. But no, excellent. It was really excellent. And I was slightly nervous given our record at Bournemouth that we went so attacking. And then to your point, Adam, in our chat, within about 2 minutes, it looked like we were going to get overrun like fairly quickly. But, you know, worked out really well. I mean, I think we're all slightly scarred because that Bournemouth away game last season was sort of arguably the lowest point of the De Zerbi kind of meltdown, wasn't it, really? When we saw the team the team that he picked, the performance that was put in, and the slight kind of handbags at the end. So yeah, very surprised. I'd have taken a point. I'd have bitten your hand off the point probably before the game started yesterday.
Yeah, I know that it's something that Craig especially has mentioned a lot. Every time that we come back from an international break, our record is generally atrocious. Under Potter, under Houghton, under De Zerbi. Every year in the Premier League, we've had a horrible return after every international break. This year, 3 international breaks, 2 wins and a draw, albeit that draw was at home to Ipswich. So maybe it was just her shaking off like the curse. But what a turnaround this year, Craig. Away at Newcastle, away at Bournemouth, 2 wins, and obviously the bit of a gross draw at home to Ipswich. But that seems to be something that doesn't seem to be following Hertzler mentally wise.
Yeah, and I think it's probably a mentality thing, right? Like it's physically, like you've got 20 odd players that now go off, and thank God there's like 3 months until another international break. But you take the Newcastle game, you compare it to what we saw yesterday. It's I think Hertzler says suffering, right? But like grinding out a result and making sure that you get it, even if you're not going to play at your best. Because even though we'll come on to the goals and it's just 2 moments of absolute magic, I think on the whole, we were mediocre in being able to combat what Bournemouth are trying to do, because they are a good team. So it's good. It's nice that we can come back from an international break and not dread the result or the performance that we're going to be putting in. It's just testament to what this team is doing, right? You're 12 games in, 22 points, played, if Man United win today, all of the top 10 basically in that time. So it's a really good start. And yeah, yesterday was no different, right? So
I think that's the biggest thing that we've seen under Hertzler, especially with the away games. And I think we have to put an asterisk next to that Chelsea game. I'd like to put some memory loss next to it, to be honest with you. But outside of that, we've been really effective at shithousing our way to away wins. Or even just points away. Because you can think about it. I know the Arsenal game was a bit of a weird one, but that's a game where, yes, they had 10 men, but we're still under the cosh. We're still we don't have the lion's share of possession. We don't have the lion's share of shots. You say the same about the Newcastle game, where it felt like we were just constantly being barraged. And you see the same here as well. These are games that under De Zerbi, it felt like you just either capitulated or you tried to just go all out attack and just beat them to the goals. We're seeing a difference under Hertzler, whereby we can actually go and counter and have those little moments of brilliance, as Craig said, and walk away with points. And that is a distinct difference between what I think we saw under the tutelage of De Zerbi.
Yeah, I mean, and that first moment of magic came in just 3 minutes of football, right? Like it started off, ugly. First minute or so just looked like a horrible game of football. Was about
that's Bournemouth though, right? That's their press, isn't it, Josh? That's what Iraiola's been,
Yeah, absolutely was. And Semenyo, for that first 15 minutes, even after going a goal down, looked like he was going to cause a lot of problems. And then he just got absolutely destroyed mentally and physically by the Brighton backline everywhere he went to go. But I mean, 9 touches between Welbeck, Rutter, and Pedro led to the goal in the Bournemouth half within about 14 seconds. You talk about Rutter and playing that Pascal Gross role. He certainly cut in from the right a lot compared to your Mintes, your Adingras, right? Like he's obviously not an out-and-out winger. And Hertzler talks a lot about not believing in formations and positions. And you saw it in that front line yesterday because that front three was just everywhere. And with Mitoma always keeping it stretched left, it was a horrible, horrible situation for Bournemouth to deal with. And that first goal, as I said, 9 touches between the three, with just the 3 players over the course of about 14 seconds, 1-touch football, a lot of it. And, funnily enough, all the beautiful football was finished by one of the most classic, like Ruud van Nistelrooy level, like fox in the box poachers finishes you'll get, right? Like with Joao Pedro popping up exactly where he needs to be. He does a lot of beautiful things, and a lot of them are very great build-up play outside the box, right? But he's the man that you want, isn't he? He is. You talk about Rutter popping up everywhere. Pedro pops up wherever he needs to have someone pop it in the back of the net.
It was very similar to that Man City goal, wasn't it? Where there's kind of a chaos in the box, and he's the only one who's really switched on and exactly where you want him to be. And again, quite a kind of scruffy finish. So he's got his all-round game is phenomenal, isn't it? Really.
The thing that I sort of tweeted out about during the game was I couldn't believe, because the weather was shocking. We've talked about the weather. The weather there was awful, and I'm so glad I wasn't there. Joao Pedro's touch and control, considering all of that, it's just ridiculous. And not just Joao Pedro's, as we saw from the goal, Danny Welbeck's, Rutter's. We've got a collection of players, and we already know with Mitoma, right? His quality of control and first touch are amazing. We have the ability to just blast that ball out to our front 4 grouping and know that they can sort of pinball it between them first time and do some rondos even, and basically get it to a point where they can create an opportunity on goal. I don't remember a time where we've had players quite of this level of quality of control, touch, and first time touch than we've ever had. And Joao Pedro is the sort of tip top of that. He's become that talisman for us now, Joao Pedro, hasn't he? I would be shocked if we're able to keep hold of him, and I'll be even more shocked if he doesn't go for a club record transfer in the next couple of years, because he's a different grave, isn't he?
That's a lot of money to break the record, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
worth
like,
it.
who would go for more? Like, who's got a higher price, Babela or Joao Pedro?
Pedro, because he scores goals.
Yeah, for now, yeah.
And he's Brazilian.
And he's so young as well. Like, it's not like he's it's not like he's 28, 29, and you're like getting him for a couple of years to bang in goals. Like at that age, like if someone like Arteta or well, not Pep really, he's not going to be playing Pedro and Haaland.
Pep's not going to have a job soon.
He's just signed a year's contract extension.
All right, so Gil cut him out of that.
To get his nice little payoff, wasn't it?
Steve Cooper's available now, so
unbelievable finish. Obviously, like that's exactly what we need. We've needed one of those since Glenn Murray, right? Like we've not had the fox in the box for a few years now. And it was an excellent finish, easy peasy, 1-0 up, 3 minutes in. Bournemouth looked utterly shell-shocked. You'd expect them to come out and really cause like all manner of problems for us after that. But for the rest of the half, they had 5 shots to our 4, 2 of those on target to our 3, an average XG per shot of 0.13. So there was no real, clear-cut chances coming from that. Everything else in the stats is just horrible. Like an average rating of 6.34 and 6.28 between Brighton and Bournemouth. Like it was an ugly game of football played in a storm with a lot of wind, a lot of rain, pretty much 50-50 possession, like almost exactly 49.2 to 50.8. It was just an ugly game of football. And I think that also really hurt Bournemouth as much as probably more so than it hurt us, don't you think? Because being a goal down, that the players they have up front, right? Your Evan Nilssons, your Semenyos, your Taverniers, they rely on being able to be very quick across the ground, and it just didn't play to that. Like everything was ugly, everything was slowed down, and I think that for that first half, I mean, the only thing really worth talking about outside of a couple of good saves that Verbruggen made, and probably really poor decision making as well from Tavernier, who took that shot, I think it was the yellow card from Babela. Arguably no complaints, right? Nobody had any complaints about yellow card number 1, where he basically just judo threw the guy to the ground. Anyone have anything they want to talk about other than kind of noting that yellow card as it's a precursor to what follows?
Well, I'll tell you what, on the flip side, Semenyo could have been off the pitch for his challenge on Ruta of around 40 minutes as well, because he went in and just completely caught him on the top of the foot. And there was a bit of a scuffle, wasn't there? Yeah, I mean, the Babela thing, we're obviously going to get on to talk about what happened in the second half. You can't, Babela, this is where Babela needs to grow and learn a little bit, because of the way he plays is what makes him excellent. And the way he plays is that he basically arguably takes too many touches on the ball, confuses the players that are pressing him, spins out of challenges, and then is left 2-3 men for dead, and he advances the ball forward. What they can sometimes do when the weather is horrendous and maybe you've been injured and you've been on international break for a couple of weeks, is he obviously gets caught in possession, and that's why he has to drag someone down and pick up that first yellow card. He took that for the team, right? It's one of those ones where he's like, I screwed up, I'm going to take the yellow card. I don't think he probably predicted that he would end up regretting that more than he otherwise would have done in the second half, because you know what's crazy to me? I thought the standard of refereeing broadly in the first half was really, really good. I thought he let the game flow as much as he could, considering that I've not seen Bournemouth misplace that many passes in a game for a long time. Absolutely shocking. Testament to the weather. And there was lots of late challenges coming in and things like that. I thought the ref managed it really well. And then I think a different referee must have come out with his face on in the second half. And I guess we'll get onto that.
I agree. Yeah. I did think the ref was okay. Again, like you have to sort of play to the conditions, right? And it's slippery. It's a bit of a mess out there. It's pissing it down. So, yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I didn't really think about it before, but yeah, the first half was just messy football, I think you said, wasn't it? Like, it's just, I don't think anyone really had a grip on the game, and everyone was just trying to get through it as opposed to taking it by the neck and going for it. So I think we did really well to get that early goal, because, you know, in that sort of weather and that sort of game as well, because they are a good team, right? Let's not kid ourselves. I think it was just, if we didn't get that goal, it could have been a really messy game, and that could have, you know, moved on into the second half, and anything could have happened, right?
Just to point out something I saw that was a little bit interesting, just around how Bournemouth were trying to play around us, because they haven't attempted more passes in a game this entire season than what they did against us yesterday. They attempted 533 passes.
Is that skewed for the red card though? Or
I think probably a little bit for the red card, but also the other thing that was a lot different is from a passing distance standpoint in yards. This is the most they'd attempted in any game this season was against Leicester, a game they lost, and there were in total 6,838 yards of total passing distance. Against us is 8,041. So they were trying to play a ton of long distance passes. You saw a lot of crossfield balls that they were trying to do, especially in the second half, to create space. I think clearly Iraola saw something and he was like, I need to work around this Brighton press, and we're going to play a little bit more long ball and see if we can do that. And obviously it didn't work quite in the way he hoped, but it was an interesting difference in their approach from what they've been playing outside of this.
Yeah, and I mean, we talk about Albion having slow starts, and we have always had, especially under De Zerbi, we would come out almost like asleep for many games, and I feel like part of that was just, we talk about this over the course of the next couple of years probably, but the fitness issues that we've been seeing post De Zerbi, right? And we're seeing that Estepinian and Mitoma can travel halfway across the planet and come back and play on a Saturday when they never could under De Zerbi. I think as we go, we're going to realize quite quickly that the medical overhaul that we've had and the coaching approach that we currently have is clearly something much more suited to the Premier League schedule than what was going on prior. But the way we came out the traps again was just utterly mental. 48 minutes on the clock, and Ruta right out wide on the right, grabs the ball, cuts very deep in to Pedro, to Welbeck, to Pedro, and he just kind of stands there before slotting through an absolute disgusting ball. De Bruyne levels of if De Bruyne had done that, it would be on every TV screen for every, it would be on Sky Sports News every 15 minutes of world-class pass of the week. It was unbelievable. And I think my favorite part of it is that if you watch it from a separate angle, Pedro, before he's got the ball, he's looked over his shoulder once. If you watch the build-up, he looks over his shoulder once and notes where Mitoma is.
Well, he's looking at Estepinian as well, Josh.
Yep, he's covered that left side the whole way. He knows exactly what's going on and who's there. He gets the ball, plays it back to Welbeck, looks again, gets the ball, and he knows. He just knows what's going to happen. And he says in a post-match interview, he says, we've worked on these runs all the time. I know what's going to happen next. And he slots it through. And we've talked about Mitoma's finishing being here nor there sometimes, but what a cool, beautiful finish into that bottom corner. And I feel like you felt the air, just exhale out from the entirety of the Bournemouth crowd. It was two early goals that just absolutely killed them. And at that point, the game plan is in tatters, right? Whatever Iraola said at halftime is cooked. That's it. You've just wasted your entire halftime essentially, because they've come out in 3 minutes and done the same thing again. You've just 1-2 punched you. But what a fantastic bit of play. And that's all four of your front group again involved. And if you look at some of the run Danny Welbeck made just to open up the lane was unbelievable. And the finish from Mitoma, beautiful. But I'm sure you're all going to want to just at least wax lyrical a little bit over that Joao Pedro pass, so I'll cede the floor to you guys.
It's mad. I mean, that still, I think I put it in our group. Someone's captured a still from the side on, showing showing where Joao Pedro is and showing obviously the direction of the pass. And there are 4 or 5 Bournemouth players in a zone where you go, either of them, any of them should and could have intercepted it in theory. He's threaded it through the spine of their team. On a plate. I don't know what's more impressive, the fact that he's seen that pass anyway. Not many players are seeing that pass, but the fact he's executed it in those conditions through the middle of their team and weighted it perfectly. I'm with you, Josh. If it had been De Bruyne or Salah or someone like that, we wouldn't hear the end of it. And it's another thing he's got in his locker. We talk about, I don't think we've really heroed on his passing very much before. We've talked about basically every other aspect of his game, whether it's him being good in the air, whether it's him just being in the right place at the right time, having his, cool penalty technique, whatever it is. But I don't think we specifically picked out how good a passer he is as well, on top of everything else.
Yeah, Craig, go on.
No, Joao Pedro's amazing. I think we'll continue to talk about that until the end of the podcast. But it's also, I think there was a lengthy VAR check there as well with Mitoma. And again, it's not just the finish, but it's the run that he's executed as well, to be 2-3 yards past his defenders and even slot it in first time because he didn't need to. He was so far clear that he could have taken a touch round. He could have done whatever he wanted with it. But a really good finish by Matoma as well. And I think, Josh, you said like his sporadic and his sort of finishing, or maybe his lead up to taking a shot, because he kind of takes too long sometimes. That half a second just sort of doesn't help him at all. But it's just good to see him back on the score sheet again, right? Like, we know that he can do it, and it's a perfect run to beat the offside, as well as a perfect pass and a finish to boot. Like, you couldn't write it better, especially in terms of the timing of the goal, the people involved, how the build-up did, the pass, the finish, the run, everything. So, you know, it's that sort of those magical moments that we're sort of alluding to, right? That 3 minutes into the first half, 3 minutes into the second half, being able to take those chances and being more clinical in that respect just helps you massively when things just aren't going your way, right? When you have a different ref come out in the second half, when you have things go against you and stuff like that, you need to be able to take and create these chances. And we're doing that this season. And that's the main difference, right? There's no huff and puff. You create a chance, you score a goal. And that sort of clinicality is something that's really impressive at the moment.
Are those the two best goals we scored this season? Or am I forgetting one?
They're up there. I mean, I think they're the most clear-cut examples of what we probably thought and hoped Hurtzleball might be.
Right.
I think the little give and go, the goal at Newcastle was phenomenal. The little give and go between Ruter and Welbeck was similar kind of vein. We've scored a lot of these kind of one touch, a lot of these really slick kind of one touch goals.
It was like a route one, wasn't it? And the defenders sort of probably should have done better with that ball over the top. But yeah, it was. I mean, it was a good end product. You know what I think was interesting about this second goal was, if you go and look at where the players were, their average positions were during the game, it's no surprise, right? We always stack the left-hand side. That's what we do. We go forward on the left-hand side and we sit a little bit deeper on the right-hand side. But if you look at Ruter's position throughout the game, he was basically playing central midfield. He was so far inside the pitch. We basically sort of tried to overload the central midfield place. And then on the left-hand side, we would push up. And Joao Pedro would bleed out to the left-hand side as well to create some interplay with Matoma. And you saw some of that movement and some of that interplay, obviously, in the first goal. This second goal was interesting because, as Craig mentioned, Ruter he started quite far out on the right side. And I think that starting position potentially confused the defense a little bit and opened up that space in the middle a little bit more, because they weren't so condensed in the center, that allowed Joao Pedro to then play that pass through, because Ruter wasn't just right in the middle of the pitch. So it was interesting that we were able to sort of mix things up a little bit as well and create different opportunities throughout the game. Again, this one was nice to see, because I don't know about you, I don't have the data in front of me. How many final balls did we try and put through yesterday that just went nowhere, just hit a defender, or just like were sloppy? There were so many. I broadly thought our end product was awful yesterday, except for these two moments that was so amazing that it was sublime or ridiculous. There was no middle ground yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I don't have the data for final third passes attempted that would considered chance creating. I feel like you'd have to pay Opta for that one, and we ain't getting that sort of data here. We'll rely on the pros to do something like that. But let's get into it. James in the chat's already well ahead of us here. He's already talking Babela in central midfield for Southampton. So let's get into and we will definitely address the central midfield for Southampton at some point, James. We're not just going to ignore it, but that'll be post this review, I think. So let's talk about it. 59 minutes in, Bournemouth spring a little bit of a counter-attack. And I think is it Kirkes? I think that's how you say his name. That's how they were saying it the whole time anyway. But Kirkes kind of comes onto the ball, lunges in, goes to ground to try and win this 50-50. And Babela just kind of runs over the top of it. From one angle, it looks like there's a little bit of contact of him brushing against his leg, like as he goes over the top. There's another angle that looks like neither of them make contact at all. Kirkes obviously feels like he's been caught because he's rolling around like he's been shot. And Atwell, who we're going to discuss here probably at length, which is a shame because it was a great win, but we have to discuss this idiot. And I would argue that he didn't come out as a different ref. I think he just took the mask off, because this is a referee that refed our Spurs game that resulted in 3 PGMOL apologies in one football game. Got to be a record. And he's also the guy that refereed the Palace game with the lines not being drawn correctly. And he also refereed the Sheffield United game. I think it was Robin brought that one up, where Holgate almost ended Mitoma's career, and he didn't even blow for a foul before VAR called him up and was like, "Hey, Mitoma almost died on the pitch, mate. I'm not sure what you were watching, but that's definitely a straight red." So this is unfortunately this is a pattern we're seeing with Stuart Atwell against Brighton and Hove Albion, and it happened again because inexplicably. He approached Babela, gave him a second yellow card, and promptly sent him off with 30 minutes to go. I mean, match of the day pundits were on. They highlighted it last night, and all 3 of them. So your Lineker, your Shearer, and I can't remember who the other lad was on there last night.
Ashley Williams, wasn't it?
Ashley Williams, that's it. Yeah, all of them said they didn't even think it was a foul, let alone a blocking. They did. Every single one of them was unanimous in that, like, they didn't even think there was anything in it. Like, they just thought it, like, there was nothing there. They replayed it from 3 separate angles. One of them I hadn't seen before. All of them came out as like that we don't understand at all. And then they probably moved on to like a big team. So, but what did you guys make of this? Like, we can't even review this. VAR could not legally review it. Like things have to change in that respect. Surely, if we are. I tweeted it from the podcast account. Like, if you're going to have something change the game state so dramatically, it needs to be reviewable, doesn't it? Like, it's just absurd.
Well, I don't know. Where do we start with this? So, I don't think it was a foul to begin with. I don't think it was even a foul. I think he caught him a little bit, but that's because he sort of overstretched himself. He was going to ground. Babela wasn't really trying to do anything malicious. He was basically just didn't get to the ball and sort of ran over him. And I really don't think it was actually a foul. So if you're saying it's a foul, I think, sure, just give a free kick, especially when you know you've booked a player. So he's looked at that and gone, that was malicious and it warrants a second yellow to send him off. And a game, how many games ban is it when you get 2 yellows?
Just
at least
one.
one, which is just one.
Yeah.
I'd be shocked if it doesn't get rescinded, but they probably won't rescind it because
they can't rescind double yellows.
Oh, brilliant! So I would be shocked. Then I'd be really shocked. It's just nonsense. It's just nonsense. You're absolutely right. I think if you're going to go with this idea that you can't have something reviewed if it's not a straight red, well, if a red card's involved, if a game-changing moment occurs, you have to be able to review it. You have to. But we saw in other games this weekend as well. Even when they do send it to review, it doesn't fucking matter anyway, because they'll screw it up with the review too, or they'll go, we can't really undermine the referee on the pitch because he's already made his decision, so therefore we're not gonna. I think someone said something interesting about this. I was listening to another podcast the other day, whereby until you fully fix this by making it more of a third-party review, it's not ever going to get any better, because what we're not doing at the moment is we're not having a referee make a decision and have someone sort of review it. We're having a referee make a decision and then another referee basically sort of confirm it. We're not getting an objective review of something. The fact that you can't even review this doesn't make any sense. The whole thing needs to be ripped up. Atwell, clearly, based on his management of games with us and what he's done, isn't fit to referee. But how many referees can we say aren't fit to referee? If we get rid of all the referees that aren't fit to referee, we don't have any referees. You'll have like 3. It's just, if we'd have ended up, if this was a Wolves game all over again, right? If this game ended 2-2, how much do you think of this podcast would have been about the referee? 99%. It's just stupid. It's just so, when you see stuff and you're just like, how is it so stupid that no one has the wherewithal to just modify something and fix it? Clearly, it's just this archaic process, and their system to actually change things is so elongated and boring and takes months and months and months and years to make changes that they can't even bother to get out of their own way. Like, it's just so arduous. I don't even know where I'm going with this point. I just burn it all down. That's all I got.
Nothing else from you two. Do you guys want to give anything else?
No, I think his soapbox is too high for me to get anywhere near, I think, at this point. No, I agree. I think you're totally right. I mean, obviously, we'll come on to the end of the game where we did our best. We did our very best to try and do another Wolves. I think had we done that, I don't think I'd be here, because I think I just would have combusted and I'd just be somewhere in the ether, very annoyed about it. But I'm with you. Like, it absolutely would have been. It would have been a similar performance. And I just don't know how. Do you know what I think about? Like, I think if the referees that we've got in the Premier League are really the ones who are at the top of their profession, like, I don't know. I don't watch enough kind of lower league football to think, like, if these guys have got to the top, what on earth are they like further down the pyramid?
They're like pirates. They've got eye patches, peg leg.
Not even there. Just like someone. I don't know.
Just chat GPT from the conference down.
It would be better.
I mean, it probably would.
It probably would be, but I mean, it's really, it gets boring having to talk about it every time. But we can't not talk about it every time because it's so evident a lot of the time. You just can't ignore it.
But therein lies the problem, isn't it? Is that if you ignore it and hope it goes away, it never goes away. Sorry, Josh, but like it's sort of, we have to keep talking about it, because otherwise nothing will change. Like, they'll just keep the status quo, and we'll have to put up with inadequate processes and refereeing in what is supposed to be the most lucrative and best football league in the world. If people watch Champions League, Europa League, Conference League, or whatever, and you see these European refs, you'll see there's a stark difference in the quality that you'll see. Not only do they have separate rules and different rules that actually make sense, but also the standard of refereeing there is at least justifiable, right? This is meant to be the best league in the world, with the best players, with the best managers and the best teams. But we have to put up with this archaic refereeing, as Adam has alluded to. And that's the point, right? And people are going to get really bored of us keep talking about it, but you have to keep talking about it. Otherwise, it just stays the same.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you're spot on though, right? Like, and I think the problem is like they continue to just almost throw it in the face of the fans and everyone else, right? That they just don't. They are a law unto themselves, right? We had Mike Dean retire, post that article essentially saying that he is quite happy to influence games to protect his friends. That's a fact. That's what he wrote, his own words, right? Like, just in case we get any strongly worded letters, I've seen go out to a few of the random podcasts this last couple of weeks over and the next one coming through. But we've seen it. Mike Dean said it. Mike Dean did it. To be very, very succinct on what we saw this last 2 weeks, David Coote has came out on video with his mate saying that he doesn't like Scousers and he slated Jurgen Klopp. That's a fact. It's on the video. I'm not going to go any further into it than that.
He would have reffed better yesterday, though. Even after a big night out, one of his big nights. He would have been better.
But this is, again, like, I'm sure everyone's kicking up a fuss about it, right? But they don't care. Like, they're throwing it in our faces again. We have a list of incidences showing that Stuart Atwell, at their bare minimum, has a long laundry list of very questionable decisions against Brighton in consecutive games that he's refereeing. And again, like, we need these things to be addressed. Mike Dean's gone on and having a very well-paid career in Sky Sports. Coote will probably go on and do the same thing at TalkSport in 3 weeks' time, right? Like, these people just get away with it and continue. So I think you're right. Like, we need to have some kind of constant barrage of attention brought onto this, because if you don't, they will continue to do it. And we've just seen what goes on behind the scenes, right? When they're away from their wives and families with other people that they like to hang out with and the things that they like to do. So, I mean, it's embarrassing. Like, this is the standard. This is our best.
Well, did you watch the Southampton Liverpool game that we're recording just after that? the Southampton player was outside the box, right? When he was brought down for the penalty.
Absolutely.
Right.
Did you hear them try and explain it? Like,
no.
Like, it was like, well, they can't confirm whether it was in or out, so they're just going to go with the ref decision. Like,
that's exactly it.
And it's like, right. So, just a case in point, if you need an example of what Adam was talking about 3 minutes ago, go and look at the Dibbling penalty, because it was like they basically admitted they don't know, and it was like, we're just going to go with the ref on this. And it's like, okay, cool. What's the point in this all then? Like, what are we doing here? But
so how is it that in stadiums you've got like CCTV, right, that can zoom in and read the serial number on a £5 note, but you can't work out whether a foul involving people at quite a bigger scale than that has taken place inside or outside the box? I mean, I could crowbar in a white line David Coote joke here, but I'm not going to, in the interest of
I mean, look at everything else that's happened at a much bigger scale, right? Like semi-automated offsides supposed to be promised to be implemented by the Premier League by the second international break. We've just finished our third, still ain't it? And the commentators are generally like, whenever that arrives, like not whenever it arrives. Like it was supposed to be here a international break and a half ago. Why is it still not here? Like that really is just like the perfect summary from a bigger level of like how little like respect they have across the board. They don't care. Like they just don't care. They're a law unto themselves. Thankfully, Fabian Hertzler this time made the changes quickly. Weaver on, Adingra on, Pedro off, Rusa off. Very much 2 flat banks of 4. Very defensive, very compact. And I think crucially rode out the first 10 minutes post red card and settled into a rhythm. Something that the Albion have not done after a red card, especially under De Zerbi, and even just as badly, with Forest earlier on in the year as well. Riding out that first 10 minutes, I think, was crucial to getting the result we got yesterday. And very different to what we've been seeing in previous times under Hertzler, De Zerbi, all of them. And from then on, it became very much a war of attrition, didn't it? And the David Brooks goal, it felt like it was always going to come, and then crashing it off the bar at the very end. I at least sleep well knowing that Verbruggen absolutely that covered. By the way, I don't know if you've looked at the angle from directly behind his shot, but it wasn't going in regardless. But it still made everyone piss their pants. But how did you feel for that last half an hour? Did you think we were going to stick it out? Personally, once we had rode out that first 10 or so minutes, I felt a lot more positive about the idea of doing so.
Yeah, agreed. I think in the moment when it first happened, I thought probably everyone would have gone, here we go. Like, I challenge anyone as an Albion fan sitting there who felt comfortable going, no, it'll still be all right. But I'm with you, Josh. As soon as we got through that first little period, I thought we'll probably be fine. But still, I mean, it's something my blood pressure could have done without, I think.
I didn't feel good. I think it's because of the Wolves thing, and because it was at Bournemouth, because we're 10 men. It just made too much sense for them to come in and end up scoring. The only thing that gave the hope was what we mentioned earlier: the amount of times they were trying to build up, and they looked comically bad at points where they were just passing and they were so far wide. There was one point it just nearly went out for a throw because they completely missed the pass so badly and someone had to sprint back and get it. And the only thing you felt like was just like, wow, if they can't even figure that out, how are they going to score? I'll tell you what I do want to talk about though, is we've mentioned this before, but how do you break up this grouping now? How do you break this grouping up of Verbruggen? Obviously, we're not changing Verbruggen. He's been absolutely excellent and in for a shout for man of the match yesterday. But Van Hecker and Igor are getting a bit of an understanding, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean,
the Captain Fantastic who just turned 33.
He needs to wait for a route back in. Be that an injury to somebody else, or be it someone having probably not just one bad game, because Hertzler's kind of shown us he's not the kind of manager who's necessarily just going to kick someone out for one bad game.
Igor physically
think-
can't get injured. Like,
Yeah,
I
it's
think
impossible
his
for
body
him.
just regenerates like Wolverine.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's harsh. I mean, it's that class. You don't mess with it. You don't mess with a winning team, do you? I mean, look, we're looking at our last. What if we lost 1 in our last 5? I think. And you look at our last 2 performances. You go, well, we beat Manchester City at home, which we hardly ever do, and not many teams until recently beat Manchester City very much at all. And we've just gone to Bournemouth, a ground that historically we barely turn up at, and we've won there as well. So barring an injury or illness to somebody, I don't see a lot. And it's, Southampton are not like one of those attacks where you just think we need Dunk's kind of, nous in there. I just don't see it. It sounds mental given Dunk's record and who he is, etc. But I don't see a viable route back in for him straight away.
I think you've got a lot of games coming up between now and the end of December, right? Like you have to rotate. So if anything, and it's a strange conversation because we have had a conversation like this for 10 years. Like Dunk has just been that guy, right? So this is a very, very weird situation where you go, actually, he's not the first name on the team sheet. He's not the first centre back that you would pick. And I'm sure that's weird to a lot of people, especially, where he's been our stalwart for so long. But between now and the end of December, you've got 7, 8 games, especially around that Christmas period. You're going to need everyone, right? And he will be rotated back in. I have no question about it. It's about who just keeps that position, right? Like who does best during that rotation and see. Those games, I think, Robin, you said about Southampton, you might need a Lewis Dunk there when you're playing your Arsenals or your Chelseas or your Man Uniteds of the world, right? Where you need a little bit of know-how, a little bit of experience to handle those situations. But we've got a plethora of leaders on the pitch now, right? So, it's not necessarily that we need that experience or tactical know-how. So it's a weird conversation for everyone to have. But at the moment, you're right. You leave them. You go, right, okay, you're playing 1 game a week. You play Igor and Van Hecke. You don't change it. Like, don't fix what isn't broke. But he will be rotated in December. I have no doubt about that.
Yeah, I mean, you got Fulham and Leicester over the course of 3 days, right? I think you're spot on. Like, that's where the transition happens if they're going to try and bring Dunk back into the fold as politically friendly as possible. It certainly isn't going to be this Friday against Southampton. But that Fulham Leicester back-to-back from the 5th and the 8th, there's your obvious switch around if you feel that it's necessary. It's always a little bit more difficult though because they're centre halves. They generally don't need the rotation, right? Like they're the ones that need it the least. But I mean, yeah, I'm glad you guys brought it up because if I brought it up as an Igor stan, it would have been immediately dismissed. People would have been +10 on the podcast of oh, this dickhead again. So I'm glad you brought it up because I think it is a horrible question to have to ask, but football's a brutal sport, right? Like you're seeing it all over social media. I saw more posts yesterday than I have in a long time of our next captain, Van Hecke. So many comments about Van Hecke being future captain in the making, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, the mindset is already looking forward, right? Like it's going to be less controversial. As time goes on, people are already looking at him and going there's a captain in the making. You look at Bart's performances over the last couple of weeks, holy shit, there's a guy who could lead from the back as well and is leading.
Well, I mean, Joao Pedro captained Watford, right?
As Stephen said in the chat, he's very calming up front as a captain as well, and you're seeing it, right? So
the Joao Pedro one is kind of when how Messi got the captaincy, though, isn't it? Where he's you're just way better than everyone else. Just be the captain.
Yeah, it's like the kid at school, right? Whose ball it was.
Yeah, just have it, mate. Yeah. Go on.
But I think Dunk. I mean, we talked about Dunk. The other element of it is even when he's been playing this season, there have been signs that he's not necessarily that comfortable in the Hertzler system. Particularly early days Hertz. I know we've moved away from that Chelsea, super high line. And Hertzler himself referenced in his interview specifically that game that they learned a lot from that. But still, I mean, even in that the kind of defensive setup that Hertzler has. Dunk has sort of, there've been games where he's visibly looked annoyed because of basically how much running he's had to do. So I mean, even before this injury, we were talking about whether or not Van Hecker and Igor would actually work better in terms of what Hertzler's trying to achieve. I think it is, it's the passage of time, isn't it, to an extent as well?
Yeah, I mean, Father Time is undefeated, right? Like, it's the old saying that goes in.
Other than Igor, right? He hasn't. We're not sure about Igor at this point. Yeah. No, but you don't know. Like, he just might go on forever. Like, if there's when it comes to like whoever replaces us doing Together BHA episode 2270, right? They'll still be talking about Igor having a 7 out of 10 against whoever on earth we're playing at that point.
We nearly sold him, didn't we, in the summer? Which there was a lot of talk about him going if we'd have brought another defender in. Which is, I think he's becoming a bit of a fan favorite, isn't it? The big thing for me is if you bring Lewis Dunk back in straight away, and Lewis Dunk has a mistake in him. We've seen that. Robin, you've just talked about that. Lewis Dunk will try slightly risky things and he'll get caught out. Now, if he comes back and in his first game, he does something that causes us to concede and possibly drop points. I don't know what happens in that situation because I think it gets ugly quite quickly. And I don't know if we necessarily want to see that. And there's a complete possibility that could occur. The thing that it changes for me, though, is that Lewis Dunk's range of passing is still very, very good. It's excellent. And I'm not sure whether Hertzler might look at that and go, I want that definitely for certain matches. Southampton at home, right? Yeah, you're not going to be under much pressure. I need you to unlock that defense because you know what? Russell Martin's going to come out, he's going to play his 5 back and he's going to do his silly stuff and he's going to lose. But we're going to need to work our way around it. There's also, I don't know if this was mentioned, but how Van Hecker obviously can play comfortably on the right while Igor left-footed comfortably left centre back. Dunk comes in and obviously there's going to be some Van Hecker and Dunk both want to play in that same role and we have to make arrangements for that. So it's tricky. I think Hertzler is going to bring him back. I think Hertzler will put him straight back in my opinion. Even if he needs to give him 45 minutes to come back from that injury, I think he'll do that and then he'll start him. I think that's what he's going to do. I don't know if I would do that though.
It's funny as well because we talk about Hertzler's like decision making in general, and like he's definitely got things wrong, right? Chelsea game horrific. A couple of subs, like not bringing on subs until really late at Anfield, terrible decision, like in hindsight, right? But you look at some of these things, and you talk about Iraola, generally considered like a managerial god, and like you're probably right, like the kiss ass in like it's been crazy like around him over all season, and last year as well, right? Like I think there has been a lot of praise for him. Yesterday, Brighton, Iraola put in 36 crosses. He had his team put in 36 crosses yesterday. That's probably where a lot of your yardage came from, Adam.
Yeah.
Talking about the defensive change, we've talked a lot about how, I mean, we've said this phrase a bunch of times this season. We didn't play that well, but we got points, right? How many times we said that this season? It feels like we are becoming a lot more tactically astute in terms of like flexibility and playing ugly to win games if we have to. And yesterday you saw it again. The 10-man, we brought on a bunch of defensive players. We packed ourselves in. We played defensively, super ugly. The conditions suited it beautifully. 36 crosses. We have not conceded from a cross this season under Fabian Hertzler. That is a fact. We have not conceded from a cross so far this year under Fabian Hertzler.
Cast your mind back to the Newcastle game as well. 23 crosses they put in and they couldn't unlock us either. They just couldn't do it. Like we it's almost like we want that. But please, just go on. Just cross against us. We don't care.
But when you strike your mind back to De Zerbi ball, right? Like we've all watched it. Like I was there at Forest where they left a Langer wide open at the back post and I wanted to like punch someone in the face. Like we did it in Rome. We did it at home to Athens like 6 times. Like it was a horrible situation for us. Set pieces, crosses. Like we were a joke. These are the same players. Like these are the these same players that are playing, basically. And the change has been, I mean, it's statistically significant, right? Like it has to be. So, I mean, I thought that was excellent. And then let's just get to man of the match. I suspect we're all going to pick pretty much the same option, which is a shame, really, because there's been a lot of good performances of late. And yesterday there was a lot of good performances as well. But I'll start with Joao Pedro. Like, he came back from injury. He's been gone since like September, I think. Goal, assist, and I think he had 42 touches of the ball yesterday, which is, you know, I think only Mitoma had less, and Ruta as well. And he basically dictated the game from start to finish. I thought it was superb.
Yeah, I mean, it is Joao Pedro, isn't it? I think I'm trying to think of honourable mentions more than anything else.
I'd give Veltman an honourable mention, probably.
Yeah, I do as well. I think Semenyo is a real threat. I think Veltman, you talk about tactically astute and sort of manage or game management and sort of tempo management and stuff like that. He's just the guy, isn't he? Like, he's just a horrible player to play against. And I'm glad we don't play against him. So I thought Veltman was great. Verbruggen was there as well. Like, what a change having a consistent goalkeeper makes, right? Like, we know how good he is, but also he's playing every game and giving it every game as well. So yeah, Joao Pedro is obviously the one. I think there's a lot of players that really dug deep. I thought Matt Svifel was very good when he came on. And I think he needed that. I think he obviously got a lot of scrutiny at the Wolves game and not making the right decision. I thought him coming on to do that belabor role for that 20-25 minutes was really good. And I think he really needed that. So
he starts, in my opinion, he starts against Southampton.
It did make me giggle where we hit them on the break twice down to 10 men, and Estepinian was just rip roaring forward, and we felt fucking nowhere. It was like literally like absolutely not. I ain't going anywhere. And Estepinian, who was arguably just as much at fault for that Wolves situation, didn't give a shit.
He's not going to change. He won't change.
He just went rampaging forward both times. It made me laugh, although I was also weeing my pants a little bit every time. But yeah, I think the same thing, Adam. Like, let's get back to James's question in the chat from like 20 minutes ago. I know you've got to drop here in a second, but Southampton, Babela has that 1 game ban. We can't change it. What does that central midfield look like? Because I mean, Yasin Ayari, like, he's another player, just like Igor and Welbeck, right? That entire spine of that team yesterday, where three players played in that game yesterday that were all players in the summer, we assume probably won't be there or maybe shouldn't be there come the end of last season in the summer. And yet one of them is in the form of his life as a striker at like 32 or whatever he is. The other one has like accidentally stumbled into the first team in Yasin Ayari and actually been an absolute baller. And then Igor has gotten one lucky break with the dunk injury. And now we're talking about Captain Fantastic not getting starts. Like, it's absolutely nuts, isn't it?
Everyone's fickle. I mean, it wasn't a few weeks ago. The Newcastle fans wanted Eddie. Were questioning Eddie Howe. Is he going to get rid of him? The Spurs fans were all Ange out last week or 2 weeks ago. And suddenly that changes. Pep was immortal before the season. Everything is just weird this year. If I'm manager against Southampton, I'm playing Matt Sweefer and Matt O'Reilly. I only want Matt's essentially in the team. And I think that would be a nice pairing to test out, see how it works. And I think it gives you nice balance there, because I think O'Reilly will be important to unlock Southampton. And I think Weaver is going to be needed for counter-attacks and things like that if Balaba's not there. Ayari was fine against Southampton, against Bournemouth, but wasn't his greatest game. I'd happily sit him for 1 game and see how that goes. I certainly don't want to see a Dingra again after he could have just played the ball into the corner or run into the corner yesterday. And instead he tried to do some stupid juke around someone and lost the ball in Southampton, then just Bournemouth, then ran up the other end of the pitch. That was absolutely stupid play. And
Hertzler almost tombstone pile drivered him, didn't he?
He should have done it. It's absolutely, you don't bring a player on. Like, okay, mate, shore up the game a little bit, and he just starts dancing around. So, come on. I've got to go. But my point on Southampton is our central midfield is going to be up against Adam Lallana. We know what Adam Lallana is.
He went off injured today.
Oh no!
He's done his hamstring.
No.
Sorry about that.
Oh god, I thought but we shouldn't be nervous about that. Southampton are, regardless of what happened against Liverpool, obviously they still lost. They have 1 win, 1 draw. They've lost 10 games. Our goal difference swing between us and Southampton is 20 goals. They are tragic. They haven't even got into double figures of goals scored this season. There have been 12 games played. They've conceded 24. Russell Martin is dogmatic in his approach and only plays a certain way. They're going to come to the Amex and try that. And my hope is we're going to give them an absolute massive hiding. That would be fantastic. I'm going to remove the dark thoughts in my mind about them shithousing a 1-0 win against us and doing something like that. But yeah.
This is the most beautiful jinx I've ever heard. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, sorry, boys.
You know, the main problem is though. The main problem is I'm going to be at the game, and my home record of late has not been brilliant. I mean, the only home game I've been to this season was the Ipswich 0-0, just to contextualize things. So, anyway,
that's good. Yeah, I'll echo what Adam said now that he's gone. Right, like they're a team that just haven't found themselves in the Premier League. They're coming to us, and we have good home record. We have a good anything record at the moment, right? So like this should be something that we are looking to win and win quite comfortably. However, you know, it's always going to be difficult. They can come here, do the flat back 5 that we just saw that they did against Liverpool, cause a few problems, get a penalty here and there. Depends on the referee as well, because you never know. Like there's all of those variables where you go, okay, it should go this way, but you just never know. All we need to do is turn up and play our game and make it very difficult for them. And I think we are good enough to do that, obviously. And I think the motivation for it is to go into Saturday morning second in the table, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a crazy weekend of football again, right? Like we are sitting 5th. We could go second on Friday if we win that game. There's another game left to go with Newcastle, West Ham. Neither can catch us right now. Same goes for United and Ipswich, a bottom of the table clash. We've got, I mean, it's been a wild weekend. Like Leicester almost and arguably should have snatched a point at home to Chelsea this weekend, if not for some dodgy VAR again, right? We had Arsenal absolutely destroy Forest, which is not what I find surprising. We've talked about this a little bit, that we believe that Forest are not quite as good as they say they are. And I think it's going to be a brutal period for them. And then Everton, Brentford, right? Like weird game. Villa Palace, bizarre again. Like none of these games are as you would expect. Spurs absolutely destroying City again. There are 5 games in a row Pep has lost for the first time in his career. And yet, for me, the more surprising one out of everything so far was Wolves putting 4 past Fulham at Fulham after going a goal down.
I think Forest and Wolves, Forest had the easiest run in, the easiest first 12 games. Wolves had the hardest 12 games alongside us. Wolves will be more than fine. I think with the team that they have, and we've obviously played them twice already. Like we threw it away in the league, but beat them in the cup. They're not going to get relegated. They're not. I don't think they're going to be anywhere close. But yeah, it's a weird league. Again, after Friday, we would be more than a third through the league, right? And you're 5th, potentially on second or being up there. Created a little 3-point chasm between us and Spurs as well. So just got to keep doing it. We've got good winnable games coming up, but they're going to come really thick and fast. That's where your depth and your rotation is really going to help. So yeah, we'll see, but we're flying. And this is a new manager, right? This is 12 games under a brand new manager. So I think we remember saying when he first joined, right? Once it clicks, it's going to work. And I think it's clicked a lot sooner than we probably thought.
Just to cover a couple of things in the chat really quickly. Doom Ultima in the chat. First of all, thank you for the compliments. We love you too. Secondly, just to reiterate for those listening, it is not possible to challenge Balaba's red. It was a second yellow card and they are not reviewable, unfortunately, Doom. So we will be without him for the Saints game. Stephen in the chat as well, before we drop, assess Hertzler's performance as a manager after 12 games. I think my answer is very simple. It's been a steady incline of being impressed with what he's putting together, right? I think it started out pretty high against Everton until you saw what Everton were doing for the next 3 games. You're like, oh, okay. They're actually just appalling. And it started almost rock bottom, right? With the Chelsea game, you thought, oh boy, like how in over his head is this 32-year-old manager? There was a lot of worries, a lot of concerns, like what is Hurtsable? Where, like, what is going on? Like, this is not Premier League sustainable. Everyone started like wanting to like go and watch Bundesliga 2 to see if we've been absolutely duped here. Like, but post Chelsea, I mean, all I can say is an assessment post Chelsea was it's been a steady incline of me being more and more impressed. And I think that also coincides with more games under his belt and more players available to him, right? Like we're starting to see the entire team become a little bit more into his realm of things that he wants to do. And not only that, but some of these key players are becoming fit, right? Like Estepinian, right? Like it's we've got to remember we'd lost him for a long time, and like it's only like his 4th or 5th game back. Like those things take time. Again, we've had to jig around with that defensive line a lot, like and that is always brutal, right? Like in every sport, like defensive lines, you've got to keep them consistent as much as you can, and in any sport you can think of, there's a team game, and Hurtsler didn't have that privilege, right? Like he had to switch and swap around a whole bunch. So yeah, for me, Stephen, like, I mean, it started out good, went horribly wrong at Chelsea, and I got really concerned. But I mean, 12 games in, we're roughly a third of the way through the season, right? We'll be over a third next week after Saints. Like, I think your assessment of him with the players he has at his disposal and the entire context around it, for me, I'm giving him like a B+. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, I think we said that the Chelsea game was the kind of the line in the sand, wasn't it? And I know I was reasonably critical of him early days, but I did caveat it at the time by saying it depends on how he reacts to the Chelsea game and what he does following that. And the answer to that was not do the same thing again, which was one of the things I was looking for. But he's also, he's come out and he said, they learned a lot from it. Which, you often get platitudes, right, from managers after you've had a heavy defeat going, we'll learn from this, we won't do it again. But we have visibly seen him adapt his defensive style immediately after that and consistently. And it's delivered results. So that's all you can ask for. I mean, when we compare it to De Zerbi, right, one of the big criticisms was, regardless of who he's got available, who we're playing, where we're playing, we're going to be shoehorning people into the same system and the same formation, and we're going to try and deliver the same results regardless of who's available. He's not done that. He's shown us to be very pragmatic, and I feel like he's kind of landing for me sort of philosophically somewhere between Potter and De Zerbi. He seems like at the moment he may be a brilliant hybrid of both of them, i.e. you've got similarities with De Zerbi when it comes to style, but he's got that kind of slightly more level-headed, pragmatic approach that we often saw from Potter. So at the moment, it feels like, yeah, he's somewhere in between, which is great. So I'm with you. I think, I mean, to be basically knocking on the door of the Champions League places a third of the way into the season, I'm going to have done a kind of complete like reverse on this, but I think a B is quite harsh on that. I think it's probably more up towards an A almost. I mean, I think if you get offered, if at the start of the season we said we'd be a third of the way through and we'd be on the door of the Champions League places, having beaten Newcastle, Spurs, United, Man City, one away at Bournemouth. You look at the bogey games like Everton away, all these places we don't traditionally do very well at. I think you'd have snapped the hand off for that. So I think kind of A minus is where I would sit.
I think just to give context, to defend myself here, I think the reason I'm giving him a B more than that is I think the mistakes he's made have been bad. I think the Chelsea game was such a stain upon like everything he was doing at the time. Like it was just like one of the most like tactically crazy things I've ever seen in my life. And then I think like your draw with Ipswich as well stands out. Like I think that was ugly. And then I think also like I just think we could have. I think there's times where he's made some really like rookie mistakes. But I think the worry that surrounded him around the Wolves draw at home as well, right? Like letting that go. I think those 3 moments were so bad that like the draw at Ipswich, the draw with Ipswich, draw with Wolves, and that Chelsea performance is like was so wildly bad. I think I can't like go above the B+ because it was just so crazy.
And that makes sense. I think that it's the size of those mistakes, right? As opposed to the mistake itself, but the actual gravitas of said mistake. But I think I'm leaning more towards with Robin than I am with you, because this is a brand new manager, and if he doesn't make those mistakes, you've taken Brighton to the top of the league, and you're quite literally battling with Liverpool, who are now 8 points clear. So if you take those 2 points from Forest, those 2 points from Ipswich, you grab a point from Chelsea, all of a sudden you're talking 28, 29 points from 12 games. Like, that's unsustainable probably for a team that we're at the moment anyway, until it clicks, right? So I if you drew it up, and I think if we spoke before this season started and you said you will be in for a shout for second 13 games through, and you've beaten the likes of the teams that we've beaten, I think we would have just said, yeah, let's just fast forward to the 24th of November then. Let's just take it and we'll move from that. I think how quickly he's been able to implement his ideas, his tactical flexibility, and actually not being stubborn is a nice change. And I think he's starting to really get his substitutes right as well. I think there's been a couple of times where he's waited too long, or he's sort of let it run out just to see. And I think we'll profile the Chelsea game under that as well. Like, let's just see what happens, right? Like, this is a way at Chelsea. Like, let's try and play them at this game. And it didn't work. Fair enough. And he's learned from it. We've seen it. That's great. I like that. So yeah, I think it's great. I think we just, between now and the New Year's, is more important than what we've probably done, right? We now need to back it up with good wins against beatable teams. And if we do that, and we stay within that top 4 when it comes to New Year's, there's a very different conversation to be had about the January window and going, right, do we go for this? Because City aren't there. Arsenal aren't exactly at their best. Liverpool are running away from it, with it, sorry, not from it. But like, there's a realistic chance for Europe again if we get to New Year's in this fall.
Agreed. I mean, we could see, right, with Steve Cooper being sacked by Leicester pretty much just before we started recording this.
Outrageous.
There's an obvious, like, they've only done that clearly because they've got someone lined up, right? It seems. And that man seemingly is going to be Graham Potter. So we could see an immediate, like in 2 weeks' time, right? We can see an immediate Hurtzler Potter like matchup.
Well, everything I've got is Ruud van Nistelrooy. Is going to be the one. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
So I mean,
quite a good choice.
There's a couple of interesting names up there. It seems that the top grouping there's one of these is not like the other. We've got Potter, we've got Ruud van Nistelrooy, and we've got David Moyes.
It was the first person I thought of. I like it just immediately, like, the
better looking Steve Cooper, right?
Yeah, goodness me.
Like, Jesus Christ, like, it's so funny reading those two
Ruud
names.
is interesting.
Oh, that's interesting. And then you see that, then you see Moisey on the list, and you're like, oh boy. Like, if they could make a choice, it'd probably be that one.
Oh yeah. They must have someone good lined up, because you're 16th, right? You've got good results.
All right. Yeah, not bad.
You're not doing too bad. And at the moment, there are 3 worse teams than you in the Premier League, in Ipswich, Palace, and Southampton. So, like,
I mean, Van Nistelrooy kind of makes sense, doesn't it, in terms of he wasn't available until about a week ago.
Yeah, he's odds on. He's odds on at some of the bookies. He's odds on. Yeah,
I think Potter basically didn't. I think he wanted more money. I think from what people said in the summer was that he wanted more money. I guess either for himself or transfer wise. So unless they've cracked,
I mean, he was also he was sacrificing his Chelsea wages at the time.
Yeah, exactly.
I suspect.
So I don't know whether he's
might be a bit more palatable now. He's not getting paid.
Yeah, so that's it. Maybe he's just like thought. Maybe they've gone back and he's gone. Actually, do you know what? If you're still interested, I am. So I mean, to be fair, either of them would probably be all right. But it is that classic thing, like sacking a manager when you're actually not doing that badly, I mean, we saw famously it worked really badly for Birmingham last year, didn't it? With John Eustace and Wayne Rooney. Like, obviously, it's a different division, a slightly different context, but we've seen what can happen before when you upset the balance of something which is working all right. I mean, we all had Leicester, you know, given the financial kind of issues they came into the division with, we had them all, you know, comfortably in the bottom three, right? And they look all right. So it seems it's a bold move.
I mean, I will caveat that with, I think most of us were expecting points deductions, which always helps, right? Like if you take 6 points off of them, they're not looking anywhere near as healthy, right? Like you take 6 off of them, they're on what 10 now. They're now joint bottom with Southampton, and I think that's what we all expected was points deduction. They managed to absolutely scam their way out of it. But I mean, I think Craig nailed it. They're 16. You brought this man in to avoid relegation, right? Like you can't be asking for more. Like that is the goal for the whole season is don't go down, isn't it?
Which means someone has become available in the last week, right?
Yeah,
so
and Rude has, right?
Exactly.
That's the thing for me.
Yeah,
it's bold though. I mean, like again, it's you're talking someone like Van Nistelrooy who's coming out of an environment like Manchester United. You know, for how much of a shambles they are, right? It's a wholly different plane, right? That he's operating in. Oh, who was he at PSV before? Was that where he was last season?
Yeah, he's a good coach.
He's a good manager, but again, he's one of these. He's been operating at the, you know, towards the top of divisions. More like we keep saying, like being involved in a relegation battle, which they are.
Do you want?
It's a wholly different. You know, it's a wholly different. It's a wholly different environment. Not to say can't do it, but it's a. You know, got someone like Steve Cooper who's actually tried and tested in terms of keeping Forest up. It seems an odd decision.
Sounding awfully Brexit about the relegation scrap, aren't we? Get Steve McLaren in. Get Stay up. Get Dyche in.
Get Big Sam in. Exactly. Like he's starting. He's like a wine glass is being put down somewhere right at the moment, and Sam Allardyce is like thinking his time's back. But no, it's a bold decision. Like it's one of those decisions. If it comes off and he starts to play brilliant football and they finish 10th or 11th or something, then great. But if they go down, then you look back at it and you think, what on earth are you doing? So be interesting. I mean, from us, it's like, well, which manager coming in is likely to be best for Buonanotte? It's, I guess, our skin in the game here, isn't it?
I mean, yeah, but the first thing as soon as I saw it was that's not good for Facundo. Like, that's not a good environment. It's not quite beer shot where like there was like riots on the pitch and people were getting beaten up, but like it's not good, is it?
It didn't do any harm for Caicedo, did it? So
no,
clearly not.
Thick-skinned, isn't it? So
yeah, I mean, who does Mark Robbins manage right now?
No one. He got canned by Coventry.
So he's fourth. He's fourth on their list.
Yeah,
that's an interesting one as well.
Yeah,
I mean, he got them, took Coventry obviously from pretty much the bottom of League Two to a kick away from the Premier League 18 months ago.
We've got the Championship's a funny league table, isn't it? We've got a whole host of Premier League has-beens in amongst.
Yeah, Sunderland are top, doing pretty well with the youngest squad in the division.
They're second actually because Leeds won.
Are they now? Oh, okay,
that's why.
Second.
Yeah, that's only why. Yeah, but you've got Leeds, Sunderland, Sheffield United, Burnley, Borough, West Brom, Watford, Millwall, Blackburn, Bristol City, Derby, Stoke as your top 12. Norwich, Swansea. Do you know what? This entire division is just like
people that have been in the Premier League, other than Bristol City,
it's
right?
Crazy. It's hard to forget.
I think it's difficult, that division. Yeah, I mean, Bristol City and Oxford are the only ones in recent times who've not been in the top division. Yeah,
notably Brighton. They've been Championship mainstays. I think they're like a record setter, aren't they? Of like being in the second tier for longer than anyone else without going up or down.
Yeah,
we got way off piste. Wrexham will probably here as well. So I'm sure that people will be both delighted and furious in equal measure. Never seen a team get people so worked up one way or another. But they're second in League One as well again. So I suspect they'll be cracking on soon. And it's quite interesting to note that actually Plymouth are doing all right this year under Rooney. I think we all thought absolute disaster choosing that one, but it's been all right for Plymouth, hasn't it? I mean, they're sitting in 19th, 17 points from 16 games. I mean, that's honestly what you expect from this Plymouth side to see. Right? Like it was always going to be a relegation battle. No
Yeah,
matter.
I mean, he did all right at Derby, didn't he? I mean, there was a talk about how much was him, how much was Liam Rosenior at the time. But he did all right at Derby in a very difficult circumstance. I mean, he's clearly someone who really wants to make a success of it, right? Given the jobs, he's not sitting there holding out for kind of glamorous jobs, as it were. So he's one that if he doesn't make it, he'll have given it a pretty good try. I kind of want him to succeed on that basis. On that, he's not like sitting there waiting for a big job to come along. He's quite happy to go and take, in inverted commas, sort of unglamorous jobs, which a lot of kind of recently retired professionals don't often do. So I respect him from that standpoint.
I think that's the problem, right? We just talked 2 weeks ago about English managers and the lack thereof of coming through. And I think that's part of the problem, Robin. Like a lot of these top players that could end up being great managers in 5-6 years, they simply refuse to grind. They think they're God's given right to come into the top levels. I mean, look at Sol Campbell. Didn't he say even 2 years ago, he still thought he was one of the best managers on the planet and he managed 2 teams to relegations in the bottom group? But we see that with Gerrard and Lampard, right? Like that entire generation of footballer, all of the top level ones, they've all came in and thought they have a God-given right to come in at the top and they've all been dog shit.
I think Lampard's about to rock up at Coventry by the looks of it. He's the favourite for the Coventry job, I think. I mean, he's sort of pinballed around. He did Derby as well, didn't he? And then he obviously went to Chelsea. Hasn't done anything, didn't do anything since or in between, did he? I don't think. So that's interesting for him. If he's another one, if he does actually try and get a championship job and do it from there, that'd be interesting. I mean, we've gone way off piece here, but the most interesting one for me is Michael Carrick at Borough, right? Who's been there for a while and is slowly, is playing really good football and is slowly kind of building them up to being a very decent championship team. I think they've scored 15 goals in their last 3 games or something. I think they scored 6 yesterday.
I mean, talk about a club historically all over the place. Let's also give Tom Cleverley his flowers too, by the way. Because he's done the same thing. He came in as a coach and has worked his way through that system and is now managing them. And they're 7th, I think, right now. And I've watched they played Friday night 2 or 3 times this season.
Yeah, they played Plymouth on Friday, didn't they?
Honestly, the football they play is utterly insane. They are one of the most entertaining football teams I've ever seen in the championship. And that's saying something. It's absolutely bonkers. They should be finishing every game 8-7. It's utterly nuts. It's totally unsustainable football. But every time I've accidentally watched them, it's superb to watch. And that's Cleverly, right? There's a set of ex-players coming through that your Carricks, your Cleverleys that didn't play at the top level, ego level, I think is the important piece here. Because I feel like we're looking at a future where over the next 20 years, Gerrard and Lampard and Rooney just become the next Pardew, Allardyce and Hodgson. They just recycle themselves around a bunch of top championship clubs, shit Premier League teams, and just dull, uninspiring appointments. We're going to have generation whatever it is in 20 years time, just utterly disgusted that their team is appointing Frank Lampard as manager in 2040.
Yeah. It's fair. I mean, you're right. I mean, the interesting it's an interesting point because it's footballers now, by and large, the ego thing, right? That comes with the money, I suppose, that they're paid at the top end of the game. So it's interesting to see someone like Lallana is quite interesting. He'll be he talks about going into managing. He's one where, in theory, right, you think he's going to be different because, we've seen him speak very well, get involved in coaching at the Albion. He's someone who's done it all, won most things at Liverpool, probably everything at Liverpool, I'd have thought. So you've got a few. It'll be really interesting out of this current crop of people who are sort of at the latter end of their career. Who's going to turn out to be a really good manager and who's going to turn out just to be the kind of ego-driven element of it. Be very interesting to see.
Yeah,
that was a tangent I wasn't expecting today, but I enjoyed it nonetheless.
No, it is always good to go on a tangent. It's always good to have these conversations because I'm sure that 3 of our listeners like them as well. So
we'll leave out Stephen's comment, I think, presumably talking about
Yeah,
Why,
let's leave that there as well. All right, so we will be back next weekend. Southampton at home, Friday night football. Don't often have one of those. I'm not sure how many Brighton have done Friday night footballs in the Prem. But here we are. Let's see how it goes. Stephen in the chat wondering if it may be Russell Martin's last game for Southampton if they get beaten at the Amex. Honestly, Stephen, he could have been sacked at any point between now and then. I think they'll probably stick with him until January. And I think they should. I think they should stick with him through the whole year, to be honest. Like, in for a penny, in for a pound at this point. Like, you knew what you were getting with him. I don't know about you guys. Like, you knew what you were getting with Russell Martin.
He got you up through the playoffs, right? So, like, you know, there's a sense of loyalty there that would be admirable, right? So, you know.
And no one's like we said, it's such a weird division that actually no one's really yet properly cut adrift at any point. Like, everyone's still in with a decent shout.
It's a good Premier League. It's really tight.
Yeah, it's a very good Premier League.
In the next 7 games, you'll see who gets put into those little groups. You always have the 4 groups of the Premier League of 4 sets of 5, and that'll come to fruition 1st of Jan, I think. And unfortunately, Southampton will be in that bottom one, but it doesn't mean they can't survive. They need to mix it up. It's just stubbornness, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it time and time again. Like, you'll have a team like Southampton sitting there on 9 points in February, and like they'll go on a mini run, and all of a sudden, like, they've leapfrogged 2 teams because that's all it takes in that bottom group. All right, let's hope it doesn't start on Friday. We'll be back on Sunday to review the game and look ahead to a pretty rapid doubleheader with Fulham and Leicester. So have a wonderful rest of your week, and we will speak on Sunday.
Cheers all.
Thanks.